tonight. Yeah, 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 yeah. I just wanna have, we just wanna have, I just wanna have fun tonight. Pull up, parking lot, pimp, and man, the day was mad. Keeping the beat out here all night, but it's some tags. No freaking no granddad. Barricade with the sandbags. We don't even pay the door to get in. But the bouncers saying that we can't sag. I know. All the million people. Some of us don't make some mistakes. Believe that shit. Ain't don't come out here. Come and ruin it. Hey, don't be a tough boy with full clears. Let the boys live. I just wanna have tonight. Yeah, 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 yeah. I just wanna have fun tonight. Yeah, 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 yeah. We just wanna have fun tonight. Yeah, 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 yeah. I just wanna have. We just wanna have. I just wanna have fun tonight. Yeah, 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 yeah. I just wanna have fun tonight. Yeah, 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 yeah. We just wanna have fun tonight. Yeah, 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 yeah. I just wanna have. We just wanna have. A house party for the car colors, looking like it's gonna be my summer. Out of time.
Awesome. We are live. What is going on?
Good evening, people. Welcome to What's Next. And we have amazing guests this week. We have Dr. Troy Nash, we have Dell Gines, and we have Cheree. And we're gonna start off. I'm gonna start off with Dr. Troy Nash's book. And the book that he wrote is called The Insane Positivity. How can you use daily inspiration to change your life, live your dreams, and defy the odds? And I want Dr. Troy Nash to say a little bit about his book and talk a little bit about himself. And then we're going to go to Dell Gines and then Kira. And before I do that, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Sharon Thompson. And I want Dr. Troy Nash to say a little bit about his book. And I want Dan Smith to introduce himself. And then we're going to go into Dr. Troy Nash with the book.
Awesome. It sounds like there's some feedback. Is there a second? If you're watching it too, it's going to be some feedback on there. Well, I'm not sure. But my name is Dan Smith. I am co-founder of the Porterhouse KC, and we're here. I'm excited.
All right. Next, we have Morgan. Go ahead, Morgan.
Hey, everybody. It's Morgan from the library. Thanks for continuing to do this, guys.
No problem. No problem. All right, Dr. Troy Nash, I'm sorry I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you didn't cut me off. Some people think I talk too much, and so it was good. Now, you mentioned the book, and the book is very interesting because the book really is about me making an effort, an attempt to communicate with my daughter, Ariel Nash, whom I obviously love very much and am dedicated and devoted to fully and completely. It was a way to put positive messages in the universe in hopes that she would read these messages. All the things I learned from my mother and all the things I learned going through life. Things, for example, like everything that glitters ain't gold. Now, when my mama would say something like that, I'd kind of look at her like that a little bit and wonder what the heck she was talking about. Of course, when I got much older, I understood exactly what that meant, that and many other lessons that she taught. So really, the book is designed to encourage others to practice positivity, to practice, as my daughter would say, mindfulness. She's got a business, Mindful Millennials, which I hope we'll have an opportunity to talk about because millennials are really making a move. But really, to encourage her to the extent that it helps others and makes the world a better place, we're all the better for it. So thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Dan, for creating this forum, for giving people an opportunity to express their thoughts and ideas and beliefs.
Right on.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us.
All right. And then next up, we have Dell Gines, who co-wrote Entrepreneurship Ecosystem, Building in Communities of Color. And it was a report. And he also did a report on Black women business startups. And his particular passion of Dell is the economic development in the inner city and rural communities. And go ahead, Dell. I want you to talk a little bit about your report, and you could talk about your book if you want to that you co-wrote.
So we got a couple reports, that are out right now. We got the Grow Your Own ebook, which basically provides an overview of entrepreneurship ecosystems. I wrote that a while back. Actually, I wrote a lot, man. Let me just go down the list of stuff I wrote at the Fed. So first thing we put out was the Grow Your Own Guide, which got a lot of attention because we were early stage national thought leaders in the entrepreneurship ecosystem world. Then I put out a guide called The Case for Youth Entrepreneurship Education. Then the Guide to Philanthropists Supporting Small Business Development Organizations. And then, I started getting serious. So then I wrote the Grow Your Own ebook. And then I we released my most proudest work at the Fed was the Black Women Business Startups Report, which is a qualitative research, discussing the motivations of Black women, the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in the nation. And the last one that we released was the Ecosystem Building in Communities of Color that I wrote with Rodney Sampson, the godfather of Black ecosystem building. And in August, probably early August, we have released the last one, which I just finished the draft of today with the Atlanta Fed, Small Business Guide to Small Business Owners of Color During the Recovery. So that'll be coming out in a couple of weeks too. And then on the personal side, I do actually have a real book coming out that I've made, converted from my dissertation, which will focus on the history of local economic development from industrial attraction through ecosystem building. So that'll probably come out in a couple of months. And my cousins actually are going to be publishing it from Kansas City, Brian and Michelle Gines in Purpose Publishing.
Wow, nice. And yeah, let us know when that book come out. Dr. Cheree Nash, let everybody know where they can get the books from and where they can reach y'all on your websites and all that. Next up, we have Cheree. I'm gonna talk about her books. So she wrote Fixing Broken, You Can Live Part Your Pain, Bear Much Fruit, and Godly Friendship. And her latest is I'm Ruth, the novel. And Cheree, you can talk about your latest.
Yeah. Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm so honored to be on here tonight. I can't wait to learn from everybody on the panel. But big ups to the Porterhouse KC. You guys are doing phenomenal work. And so this platform is amazing. And thanks for even allowing us to share the works that we all are doing in the community individually. So my name is Cheree. Cheree means shining light, and Cheree means beloved. And I have been graced to write a couple of books. The last one I wrote is a novel. It's called I Am Ruth. And it is a 21st century version of the Book of Ruth and all of what she may have walked through had she lived on the earth in 2019, 2020. But what I really love doing is entrepreneurship and all things entrepreneurial. And so God has afforded me an opportunity for the last 7 years to do a little small business called EBB, Entrepreneur Business Basics. And so I'm loving the opportunity to talk tonight about whatever comes up. We got some heavy hitters on here, so I'm going to be quiet.
Oh, no. You can talk all you want. And I just want to let everybody know that all three of our guests are very big keynote speakers and inspirational speakers. They actually all over the country between the three of them. So yeah, this is real big right here. And they have a lot of gems they're going to give out tonight. So go ahead, Dan. I know you want to say something.
Absolutely. No, I'm excited that Dr. Nash, Kira, and Dell are joining us. They accepted the invitation because we Morgan, Sharon, and I had a conversation a few weeks back, and we kind of wanted to dive into more what does economic development look like in our urban communities, and we really didn't know. I mean, there's just so many places that you could start with that type of conversation, right? Because we're talking about small business development, we're talking about people development, we're talking about a lot of, and so we actually, so first off, we started the conversation last week. We brought Ezzy Redwood and LaMonica Upton that just commented on the post. Hey, LaMonica. She actually, they kind of started this conversation off, right? And so we wanted to reach out to some folks that we felt like were foremost experts in a lot of these areas, and wanted to kind of get your feedback and see if we can create a playbook of sorts via these conversations to where we could actually see some actionable things happening in our communities to see them grow. But before we actually get into that type of conversation specifically, we wanted to know what you guys were working on before COVID and how'd you pivot when COVID hit. So Kira, if you wouldn't mind starting for us, and then we'll just go around the room and just what we have going on.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we were actually, EBB was in the middle of our 8th cohort. We had 17 entrepreneurs of color, African-American entrepreneurs in Kansas City, Missouri, and on the Kansas side. And we were like 8 weeks into our 12-week cohort. And we couldn't do anything. We had to stop. And it was really powerful because we know as entrepreneurs that you have to find a way to pivot. And no better way to learn that than learning about how to be an entrepreneur. So the biggest thing for us was making sure that the entrepreneurs understood technology and how important that is to business. And so we moved everything from our on-site location to Zoom. And I'm so happy to know that they were not only able to pivot, but they were able to launch businesses. And they graduated April 30th. And so that is by far the biggest hurdle, I think, as an organization we've ever had to do. And, you know, I for 1 second, I thought about giving them an opportunity to recess the class. And I thought about it overnight and I said, no, if I teach them that, then they'll think every time something happens, you just fall back and wait. And I said, we're doing it. And I expect for you to show up just like you were showing up in the classroom. And so we were successful. So that's where we were. We were in the middle of a cohort.
Nice.
That's awesome. That's good that you guys had the opportunity to pivot too, and that you did that. That's phenomenal. You know what, Sharon? I think I skipped over a piece. We normally do our shout outs. And so I jumped right into the conversation before we had an opportunity to do our shout outs. So I'm gonna just start really quick while I got the mic, and then we'll just go around and just throw a couple shout outs out there, and then we'll get back to where Dr. Nash and Dell Gons were before COVID hit. I want to shout out Ezzy and LaMonica, obviously, because they did our show last week and they were phenomenal. I want to shout out Chess Inc., our partner and organization. They're doing some phenomenal work over there. I want to shout out the Kauffman Foundation for continuing to support entrepreneurs in this time. They're actually continuing to press forward when there's a lot of organizations or foundations that have kind of pulled back from their work. Kauffman Foundation is actually going forward with their work in this time too. So that's like a huge piece. And there's so many, and I know Sharon is going to touch on a lot of the folks that I would shout out anyway. So Sharon, what you got?
So Earl Watson on the Kansas side, he's doing some big things over there for the Kansas side. Joey Thomas, I'd like to give a shout out to him. Busy Benton with the 816 Day, Nia Richardson, Marquita Miller, and Dawn Elizabeth, Deanna Munez, Michael Long, Chris Good. Let's see what we got here. Ryan Harvey, Kira, of course, and Tammy Chanel, Shakia, Davin, and Gary Mitchell, and Monique. And I also like to shout out my wife with Amethyst Place. Because, you know, I get in trouble if I don't shout out her. So,
Morgan, who's your shout outs?
My shout out this week is Jackie. Jackie actually comes out every morning whenever there's a large event in the Jazz District, and she's just a resident and she picks up the trash from the event. A lot of people don't realize that when you have a city supported large event that maybe the city council has funded, that trash pickup is part of that. And if you're in a community that wants to bring your community together, you might not have that kind of budget item. And I think we need to shine some light on the residents that show up, because it was Sunday morning. Jackie and a gentleman I'm going to refer to as Grandpa, we just started picking up trash. And it's such a critical part of community development. I mean, you can look at so many studies about what happens when that one piece of litter gets put down and how it attracts the other litter, and how park design and city design goes into that. And so Grandpa and Jackie, all the shout outs to the world to you. You do amazing work.
Nice.
And Morgan's talking about the Juneteenth celebration that happened down at 18th and Vine. So she was talking about how they went down there and cleaned up the next day. So I wanted to shout Morgan out too for that. That was awesome that you went down there and you actually posted and asked other folks to come down to help out. That was dope. That was dope.
Yeah, Jackie and Grandpa though are doing it every single time there's an event. So hats off.
Absolutely. Wow. Dr. Nash, you got any shout outs? Anybody you see out there that's really doing some good stuff in the community?
I do. I don't have a wife, and I've not picked up any trash this week, so I feel kind of guilty on both fronts. But really, I want to shout out really a group of people that I think are deserving, that are really working to make their voices heard right now. With all that's going on in our country, I think it's fair to say that millennials have stepped up. I mean, they've just stepped up in ways that are just unimaginable. When you look at the protests and the thing going on, I can look right outside my window. I look, and it's just millennials just all over the place. And so there are three that come to mind, one of which is my daughter, Ariel, whom I spoke affectionately about a moment ago. Here's a kid who graduated from Pembroke Hill at 18 years old. And when she graduated in 2018, true story, I can't make this stuff up, she was literally the only one in her class that did not go to college. Now, if you graduate from Pembroke, you don't go to college. I mean, people talk about you bad, they call you names, they look at you funny, because that's just not what people do there. But she is wise beyond her years. She says, listen, I want to learn a little bit about life first before I heap all this debt on me. So what did she do? She went to Washington, worked on Capitol Hill, and wrote a little book. She has a book. It's called Mixed Signals, and it's talking about teen and millennial related issues. It's on Amazon. You can find it, Mixed Signals, and buy it so that she can earn money so that I can get some of my money back. I mean, that's just really what it's all about. But she really has taken a leadership role in this new program that she's coming out with, Mindful Millennials, really talking about issues that affect millennials. And so I'm just proud of her. I'm a doting father, as you can imagine. But there's also a young man that comes to mind, Trenton Lee. You guys may have seen this kid. He was on the Steve Harvey show. He's the kid that was bullied in school, remember that? And he started designing wigs. And now this guy designs the biggest celebrities on the planet. He just got back from LA with his mom, doing tremendous work. And I'm just amazed because I support him, as does Cedric the Entertainer, as does Steve Harvey. You all ought to check him out. He's on Instagram. His handle is @Trenton Lux Couture, TRENTONS. Trenton Lux Couture, LUXECOUTURE. I had to spell that out because I didn't know how to spell couture without looking at it. So I'm just going to say that, doctorate degree and all. But Trenton really is remarkable because he shows what can be done when you're able to make that mental leap from where you are to where you'd like to be, notwithstanding what others are saying about you. And finally, there's a young man that I work with. He just turned 27 today, Christian Rustick. He's a young man that played football in Ottawa, and I had an opportunity to meet his mom and his dad. And of course, now he works with me at Newmark. We are the 4th largest commercial real estate firm in the world, 480 offices, 16,800 employees. And let's just say that I'm the tallest one in the group. I'll leave it at that. And Christian is the second tallest one in the group. And so we're making great strides in that commercial real estate space. But really, these millennials, Ariel Nash, Trenton Lee, and Christian Rustick, these are people that inspire me. And I hope that when you all do a future show, you can invite young people like that so that you can see that our future really is in good hands.
Awesome. Wonderful shout outs. Yes, Dell, who you got?
I just have one. I'm going to give a shout out to Kim Randolph from the Heartland Black Chamber of Commerce. So Kim has done a great job in taking over for Crystal Watson. She brings great energy, a tireless work ethic. And one of the cool things that she's done since COVID is she started convening all the minority chambers along with myself, Nia Long, and I forgot her name. I met her. She's from the Prospect Business Association. I think that's where she's from. But she's been convening us pretty much every week. We finally slowed down almost since COVID began to kind of create some coordinated action as minority chambers and those others that supported. And, you know, we were able to support Nia in pulling together the survey at KC BizCare to disseminate, as well as providing a lot of feedback to people like me who you know, are looking for insights to what's happening on the ground around PPP, all these other things. So she's doing a good job there. So she's my shout out.
Awesome. Great shout out. And Kira?
I want to shout out Black Excellence KC, Keanu Sinks, another millennial that's doing great things in the city. Also want to shout out Alicia Kennedy, who is running for lieutenant governor for the state of Missouri. She's doing some powerful things. I also want to shout out NASCAR. NASCAR actually is a sponsor for EBB, and they sponsor some of our entrepreneurs to go through our cohorts. And so I know they've gotten a lot of press here in the last few days, but I want to shout them out. And last but not least, I want to shout out Donald Hopkins with KC Collective. I want to make sure that we remember both sides of Kansas City. As much as we talk about Kansas City Metro, I think a strong, healthy ecosystem for our cities need to include both sides. And so I know all of us are working on both sides of the water. So just don't forget KCK. We're over here too. So shout out to KCK.
Woo-hoo.
No doubt.
Good shout out. Great shout out. So where we left off, so my apologies for going out of order, but we were talking about what were you working on prior to COVID. So Dell, I want to ask you what was going on in your world prior to COVID and what the pivot looked like.
Yeah, sure. If you see me yawning, it's because I'm tired. I started one thing I started during COVID was woodworking, which is a miracle because I'm averse to manual labor at this point in my life, and I'm paying the cost for it too. So I went out yesterday and I did all my yard work, cutting down branches, and then I built a new door for my shed, and when I got in the house, man, I felt like I went through a 12-round fight with Tyson. So I doped up with Tylenol PM, and I've been sleepy all day, man. My body doesn't. At my age, whatever, my age or just my general lack of physical fitness, it doesn't respond like it used to. So, I'm on the tail end. I might go to bed as soon as we get done with this. But so really, before we were planning two kind of really major things. One is we were going to convene the Growing Entrepreneurial. We used to do the biannual conference, Growing Entrepreneurial Communities. And we kind of decided as the group, because it's me, Source Link, Network Kansas, Penny, formerly from the Edward Lowe Foundation, that because Kaufman had a lot of overlap, started to have more overlap with our attendees, that we just let Kaufman do their thing, support Kaufman, and we do some very tailored things. So we're going to do a thought leader event around entrepreneurship ecosystem policy. So that was a big thing that we ended up having to eliminate. And then I was also going to start doing all the regional outreach on the guide ecosystem building in communities of color. So I was going to go to 5 or 6 cities in the district and really, pull together these networks of people around that issue in the guide and hopefully spur some kind of increased ecosystem activity in some of the major cities in the district like Tulsa, Denver, et cetera. So, of course, all of that travel stopped. And really our first pivot, like the first week of stay at home. So I was out speaking at Harvard right when COVID hit. So I was in Boston and I spent a day at the Boston Fifth and I spent the day at Harvard. And then I ate at an Indian buffet on my way to the airport from Harvard because I'm a big buffet guy, right? So I get home and then immediately I get an email from work saying, yo, where did you travel? All of this stuff is coming down the road. I'm like, man, I was in I was in Boston. I was out to school, blah, blah, blah. And they said, well, hold tight. Don't come into work until we kind of figure this thing out. Then it was like 2 days after that, they're like, bump it, everybody go home. So we've been home ever since. Wow. So that first week I was like, well, what do I do? You know, I don't know what to do. Then my mind started kicked in. And so we've done a lot of outreach. You know, we've had a lot of calls with folks from the region, the nation. I called pretty much every minority chamber in the region that I could get hold of, asking them what they were going, what were they seeing, what were the impacts of PPP or lack thereof, et cetera. I deployed a survey. Some of you may have seen it, that SNAP survey. I was one of the first that I've seen even in the nation to do that survey. And I had to shut it off because I only thought I was going to get 40 responses. I got 500 responses in 2 days. Ooh, right? Wow. Early stage talking about the COVID. Wow. And of course the feedback was dramatic right then, even very early on. And so since then, you know, we've kind of pivoted to, we're starting to see groups like you really pivot hard into the virtual space. So a lot more virtual invites, like between in the total of this week, it'll be 5 alone, including you. Which is easier because, you know, now people don't have to do a whole conference. So they can just stand up, you know, their Zoom and say, you know, we want to pull people together. Then it just becomes a virtual marketing deal versus having to organize and coordinate logistics and all of those things. So I anticipate that'll increase. And then, of course, the guide. One cool thing that I did that I think your listeners may, you know, appreciate. So across the Fed system, right, we're 12 banks, all decentralized. We have a board of governors that kind of serves as the de facto guidance of this Federal Reserve system. And so because we're decentralized, it's hard to coordinate, but we have done a system work group that was stood up. So what I ended up doing is I launched a group across the Federal Reserve system focused specifically on the issues and concerns of communities of color and what various banks are doing to address that. And some cool things have already come out of it. Boston Fed is standing up a really cool, working with a consultant called Dahlberg to stand up a really cool new program supporting small business owners of color. We've been able to amplify the work of, you know, other banks. This is what created that co-authorship with the Atlanta Fed to produce the Communities of Color Guide. So I think it's going to be a great addition to the Federal Reserve System and ultimately to the communities to focus specifically on the needs of communities of color so we don't get them washed out in all the other issues that we've had. So those are the major things that I kind of pivoted to.
Awesome. That's a lot of good stuff. That's a pretty scary situation being in Boston when this thing just kind of hit, because I know a lot of folks were really nervous about what the next step is or what they should do. And I can imagine getting on a plane and coming back from Boston in the middle of this probably was a pretty interesting situation for you there.
I would hate to not bring this up, but Dell, he grew his hair out, right?
Yeah, he did.
So I had a Corona fro, right? And I got so many jokes calling me George Jefferson, Sherman Hemsley, people, man, funny people on Facebook wanting to do Photoshop him onto me and me onto him. And finally, the reason I cut it, because I had it growing for a good, 2 months. But I had that national panel with AEO, and normally, like, I would just wear a hat on a regular Zoom call or whatever. But I'm like, man, this is kind of a big deal. Man, let me go ahead and clean this mess up, because it was getting pretty bad. And here's the bad thing about it. My wife was like, she came to me after I cut it. She said, "Really glad you cut it. I was growing unattracted to you."
Yeah, buddy. Hey, really quick, before we go to Dr. Nash, I want to shout out some folks that have commented. If you have not commented, you're chiming in or you're tapped in, you're watching, definitely give us a hi, or even if you don't have a question or comment, just say, hey, that you're there. I see Deron Cooper is tapped in. He has a company called The Ultimate Game Night. Hey, D. Cool. Ariel Nash, it looks like she posted Dr. Nash's books, the link for the book. So if you're interested in those, Sarah, thanks for tapping in. Tarsha, thanks for tapping in. Eric, LaMonica. So I just wanted to give shout outs to those folks Lauren, looks like Lauren's tapped in, Sharon's wife. What's up? What's up, Lauren?
What's up, Lauren?
And Kiana's tapped in. So Dr. Nash, what Hurston just tapped in. Dr. Nash, what was your what were you working on prior to COVID, and kind of what does that pivot look like?
Well, I had the dubious distinction of being dumb enough to be in New York City for a couple of weeks, right in the epicenter, and caught it. I mean, you're looking at a person who never gets sick, never goes to the doctor. I figure it this way: if you don't bother me, I won't bother you. In other words, that's my agreement with doctors and hospitals and all that represents. But I respect our men and women who are working on the front lines to keep everybody safe. But having said that, I caught it. But I didn't know what it was. I was there at the epicenter, and for 3 weeks, it took me out. It was the sickest I'd ever been in my entire life. So when people say COVID ain't real, I go, you're crazy. When people say, I'm not going to take it serious, I'm not going to do this. No, I mean, I put trash bags over my head, pillowcases, everything. I don't want it. It's bad stuff, and it will kill you. It was to the point where I couldn't even swallow. And I would say, for example, sitting here, my heart would beat fast as though I'd run up a flight of steps and I was just sitting down. And then the worst of it all is when I did think I was reasonably well enough to go out, I tried to walk in a straight line and it felt as though I was walking sideways and couldn't even take a step. And so COVID is a very bad thing. And so once I came out of that, I just went back to work like we did. But the world has changed, ladies and gentlemen. It will never be what it once was. You take, as someone put it, COVID, which is our 1918 pandemic. You take the economic collapse in our country, and it has collapsed. Make no mistake about it, regardless of what Wall Street and the markets are doing, because it appears that Main Street and Wall Street are not speaking the same language. Of course, Dell, we always knew that was the case. But unemployment at Great Depression levels, and then finally civil unrest, giving those of us who were not born or not part of the '68 riots an opportunity to see it. Now, take all of that and stir it up, and go out and try to make a living. This is what we're faced with, and if you think about what COVID did to Black and brown people, disproportionately from every one else, you have to understand that if you think things were bad before, and I don't mean to be an alarmist or a gloom and doom person, but all one need to do is look at the data. And even in the month of May, where you saw a decline in unemployment for the majority community, you actually saw in the month of May an uptick in African American unemployment. And so I don't know what the answer to the question is. That's why you have Dell and the Federal Reserve and folks like that to sort of work it out. But those are things that we're having to grapple with. From a practical standpoint, speaking, Zooming. Everybody's Zooming now. I've not spoken at a hotel or an event. And many of the organizations that I'm affiliated with, the Zoom call is the way to go. And finally, I would comment just on some other activities that I think are important. Are you all familiar with Arvest Bank? Arvest Bank here in Kansas City?
Yep.
The largest privately owned bank in the United States. It is a big deal, and I have the good fortune of serving on their regional board, doing things that banks do. So I'm proud to say that when the PP program came about, Arvest was there sort of on the front lines, making sure that folks had what they need. While other banks are talking about it, Arvest Bank has a branch right there on Linwood and Prospect, the old Union Bank, if you all aren't familiar with it. And I don't know when this time a new bank branch has been built. So that's a plug for Arvest. But the other thing is prior to that, Karen and I worked together. She is very persuasive, and she talked me into the Salvation Army project to co-chair their Christmas event, which was a lot of fun. But I think since the inception, there's only been 2 African Americans to do that. And with Kara's lobbying and strong arm unfair tactics, I had the good fortune of doing that. But the Salvation Army is another organization that's working during this period to really make a difference in the lives of those who live in these underserved and economically deprived communities. So through it all, still focusing on real estate. Just a plug for my firm, Newmark Grubb Zimmer. We are a full service, comprehensive commercial real estate firm. If you can lay down and dream about something as it relates to real estate, the answer is yes, we do it. In other words, that's just how big and dominant the firm is. And then finally, I would say, again, underscoring my earlier comments with respect to these millennials, learning all I can so that I don't become extinct. And then, Dell, just to give insult to injury, my hair too is thinning up here, so don't feel bad. I had it, and COVID surely solved this problem. So you know what? I'm just cut it all off. I wouldn't look as cute as you, so I'm just going to cut it all off and get it all fixed up. But that's really
I love it. I love it. Hey, it looks like, so just to shout out, we got Michelle on, we got Kevin Manning that's watching, we got Aaron that's on. Hey, Aaron, Amy, we got Terrell is on, and so I just wanted to shout those folks out too. So really quick, so I'm gonna go into some questions about kind of the meat and potatoes of our conversation. And this is for everybody. This question is for everybody. So in talking economic development in the inner city, what are some of the steps small business owners and the general community can take to improve on community sustainability and business support? So I'm gonna start with Cheree on that question. In talking economic development in the inner city, what are some of the steps that small business owners and general community can do to improve on community sustainability and business support?
So I think the key word there is sustain. I love that we have all of this hyper support right now for Black businesses. I think that it's long overdue. My prayer is that we sustain that support, that this doesn't become something that we just did great, for 3 months and now things go back to what they were previously in terms of supporting Black businesses. Because entrepreneurship is the bedrock of our communities. And we already know through all of the studies that if Black businesses are in Black communities, they will employ Black people. And then we will have better communities, we'll have better families. So sustainability, I think the support that we've been getting, the shout outs, the lists, the making known who's selling what and where, I think that's how the community can help sustain it. I think how Black business owners can help sustain their businesses is to really actually be in the right position. And what I mean by that is make sure that your books are in order. Find out what you don't know about business. I think it's one thing for us to say, hey, go support a Black business, and then they go support it and the Black business isn't ready. And so I think it's both sides. We need the communities to support us and to continue to support us. But then we need our Black businesses to be ready and be in position so that they can get a government contract. And what all does that mean? Do you have the right stuff in place? I think it's easy to say, like with Troy, although I didn't twist his arm. I think it's easy to say, yeah, we don't have a person of color that has chaired this campaign that serves the community, right? But Troy had to be ready, and I want us to be ready. And what does that mean? That means really looking at the way you do business. And are you doing it, one, ethically? Are you doing it legally? Are you structured the right way? And if you're not, tapping into the community resource partners like Porterhouse, who are providing that kind of insight. So that's what I would say.
No, I love it. I love it. Hey, so Morgan and Sharon, I definitely want you guys to tap in as well with this. So I know that Dell works in specifically in a lot in this space. So what is your thoughts, Dell, when we talk about economic development and what small business owners and general community can do to improve on the sustainability and the support? What do you think? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it depends on when we're talking about. Like, what we've seen happen due to COVID has happened. And so one of the first quantitative studies that came out by probably one of the top researchers on minority businesses in the nation, Rob Fairley, showed that 41% of all Black businesses closed during COVID. This is compared to 32% of Latino, 26%, I believe, of Asian, and like 17% of white businesses. And so, and we have to be careful when we say close. This does not necessarily mean close permanently. It means that as of now, they've closed. So you have a lot of things going on. Like, so, and I've been trying not to be such a negative Nancy, on a lot of this stuff. Like on the last deal I did with Pipeline, I felt I was really negative because we were talking about more social issues. So in this, I'm going to try to keep it as bright as I can. But one of the things about the protest and the energy around supporting Black businesses is it really came at a terrible time. Like, if 41% of us are closed and now everybody wants to support Black businesses, it would have been better if there was a better time. It would have been better to have happened when all of our businesses are open, so we could have taken a lot more advantage of it. So you have that. So in the process of recovery, and I've said this before, Black businesses are woefully under-resourced in every dimension. But one of the benefits of that is that because we had no resources going into this thing and we were running a business, getting back on with no resources is something we're pretty darn familiar with, right? So I expect the bounce back to be strong. Most people don't realize that after the 2008 recession, that Black businesses and minority businesses actually produce more net new jobs coming into the recovery than non-minority firms. So I anticipate that'll be similar. Now, some of that could have been because more declined and lost more jobs during the recession. And so coming back out of it, they were just picking it back up and carrying the momentum. But I anticipate that to be the same. I think you're going to see two interesting phenomena that are actually going to happen. So you're going to see Black people that were in the labor market that got let go because of the way the economy's changed and how people do business, start businesses. Mm-hmm. And then I think you're going to see Black people who had to close their business go into the labor market. So there's going to be a lot of this going on. And this is why it's important for you and Kira and others like you to get the resources you need to scale up your operations, because the demand is going to be higher than ever before, because you're going to see, one, those people trying to get into entrepreneurship, but two, those businesses trying to get back on and recover are going to need to be scaled and skilled back up. And in some cases, pivot and develop a stronger infrastructure. And that's why it was very important in this guide to the recovery that I wrote, that I got all this insight, but I wrote a section specifically on the fact that we cannot let our support providers in communities of color die. Because if they die, then who's going to support the business owners as they try to get back on? So I think what we need to do from economic development standpoint is, one, we need to ecosystem build, right? So we need to develop this vast network of connected resources and relationships to support the entrepreneur. But we also need to ensure that our support providers are adequately resourced and supported, because like you said, Dan, Kauffman was probably one of the few that stayed in the game. A lot of the foundations and philanthropists turned to direct services, social services, et cetera. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, if you let the infrastructure of support die, what happens when the recovery process occurs? Now you don't have Black chambers that are able to create networking opportunities. You don't have Mountain Plains Minority Supplier Development Councils that are trying to leverage people into opportunities for corporate contracts. You don't have Kiras, you don't have Dans and Sharons, because they don't have the resources to continue to do the work. Now all of this deficit of skills and information and resources that come through you guys is gone. So that's one thing to think about. And I do see that question. I'll answer that real quick and then turn the floor back over. So any correlation between the existence of African Americans in Texas owner founders as resources allocated to African American owners and businesses in general? I think it's hard to say, because usually in the tech space, there's often a different type of pathway. So the pathway in tech, although not always, is usually more equity based, unless you're just starting it on the side and bootstrapping and scaling it. So usually what you tend to see is tech-based founders, at least in the startup world, are usually trying to move to the trajectory of venture funds or angel funds. And that's a little bit different trajectory, because usually you're talking about developing prototypes, pitches, most valuable products. Then you try to get in front of the funders and pitch it and talk about the market and scalability. And they say, yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to invest and take some equity for you to go to scale. And oftentimes traditional non-tech oriented business go, sometimes the capital, venture capital route, but most often they tend to pursue traditional credit and capital sources and financing. So I'm not sure that there is a lot of correlation, but what I would say is we do need to pivot heavily towards more tech and tech-enabled firms. We just have to, because if we don't, we're never on the cutting edge of the solutions to the new problems coming out, and we actually get left out of a lot of things like big data. I was on a really cool call with Rodney Sampson and OHUP on Juneteenth, and on it was Dr. Timit Gebru. And this is a sister originally from Ethiopia. But one of her major claims to fame is she works at Google in ethics, and she's a thought leader in AI, and she started a firm called Blacks in AI. And so she talks about all the challenges and things like facial recognition and how that disproportionately impacts Black people, and et cetera. We need more people in those kind of spaces as well. So we need some different kind of training mechanisms and capital access as a form of economic development.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Dr. Nash, what's your thoughts when we talk about building in the inner cities and small business owners and community? I know that you served in a city capacity for a number of years as a city official. And so what's your thoughts on kind of building the sustainability and then also the support from or the businesses getting that support?
Right. I think I understand the question. I really don't know, because as you all know, I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, and in between trips to Europe and the rowing club, I really disconnected from all of that kind of a thing. That's a narrative that some people have proffered. How many of you, by a show of hands, are familiar with Holy Temple Homes? Raise your hand. Holy Temple Homes. Remember Holy Temple Homes? Right. Yeah, they tore it down. You know how bad a housing project has to be for HUD to tear it down? Pretty bad. I had to do the distinction of living there. Well, what about Friendship Village off of 56th Street, off Slow Parkway? Friendship Village? Yeah, I did 7 years there too. So I understand, right? And we had a framework or a system in place. We've always been entrepreneurs. My family, we were pharmaceutical reps long before Pfizer and all of these other large scale companies. We found out how to distribute product in the most efficient way to provide an elixir to the general population to allow them to take leave of their mental faculties, however temporary. You understand, right? So I get that part of the world. Having said that, how do you make that mental leap from coming out of those kinds of environments to be able to be on the microphone today with Dan, Sharon, Morgan, Kara, and Dell with the Federal Reserve Bank? And by the way, that's a big deal, Dale. You might think it's not. It's a big deal, and I'm glad to see you are there. I was just reading Raphael Bostic's stuff today out of Atlanta. I heard you mention Atlanta a couple of times. That's a different story. But to do that and to be successful really is your question. Now, I know we're talking about business and economic development, but if you can't get the individual, there ain't going to be no business and there ain't going to be no economic development. So where I focus on is using, since I had a little bit to do with my daughter being brought into the world, I believe in social experiments. I know about the IRB and the things that are necessary to get your PhD and your doctorate and so forth to make sure that when you're using human trials, you do it in the most ethical way. Well, that's my big old head kid, right? And so I mentioned earlier about coming from an elite private school when I barely made it out of school, that kind of a thing. And then saying to her, well, now wait, you can follow the traditional format. We can go spend an additional $280,000 over 4 years and then get a job paying about 50 or 60 to then pay that back. And then the return on investment would be X amount of years. Or get this, what a novel concept. We can learn about the Vanguard Fund, right? And we can teach our children what Einstein considered to be the ninth wonder of the world, and that is compound interest. And how that works, that the earlier you start and you leave it in, how your money grows. And then looking for strategic opportunities to participate as an entrepreneur to grow your passion. Notice I haven't said anything about getting a job. I don't give a damn if my daughter ever gets a job. I can care less. I want her to live her passion and add value. and make toward the betterment of all humankind. That seems to me to be a pretty good way to live life. Now, if you can have some fun as you go along and enjoy the journey, you can do it. But I think these are the more fundamental things. Don't tell young Black children that reading and writing and doing arithmetic somehow is uncool or acting white. I'm going to talk about it. You can write in a little comments all you want. I'm going to talk about it. That's nonsensical and that's stupid. Stop drinking, stop smoking dope, stop taking Xanax, stop doing all that stupid bleep stuff. Open a book and start to grow your consciousness. Nobody's coming to rescue you. Nobody's going to give you anything, right? I've sit on any number of boards. I sit on the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation board in Washington, D.C., one of the most powerful boards in the country, and had the good fortune of being most recently profiled as one of the 2020 most influential Black executives in all of corporate America. That little bleep piece is where my little big old head is. And I say that not to impress you, but to impress upon you. If you want to make that mental leap, you're going to have to do the things that are necessary to be successful. I'm not worried about what Kim Kardashian is doing. I'm not worried about what Kanye West is doing or some baseball player or basketball. I'm not worried about any of that. What tools do I need to be successful, to live my passion? You ignite that in our people, brothers and sisters, and I can assure you that we would have more capital, we would have more businesses, we would have more of everything. But a lot of what's going on today, I just simply can't justify it. If I pick up a gun and shoot Tehran, I don't know how I blame that on anybody else. If I take the life of, I don't get that. If I'm missing something, brothers and sisters, educate me. I know the history from 1619 to the present. It can go through every seminal event in African American and Black history, point by point, because I put forth a deliberate, conscious effort to learn it. So I think we have to become better people. Therefore, we become better business persons. Therefore, we build stronger and better communities. And with that, Mr. Chairman, if there's no further questions. Teasing.
I love it. I love it. I appreciate your perspective for sure. Sharon, Morgan, what do you think? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, with me, it was a lot of networking going on, especially millennials. They were networking in groups in Kansas City, Facebook groups. They were trying to make this little circle, well, not little, this big circle where they can buy each other's items and products online. So that was a big deal that was happening with our inner city. And then as far as that's exactly what Dell was saying, the networking part. That's all I have, right? Really, is the networking was a big piece that was going on with our city. And it's going to continue to get bigger and bigger. You'll see.
Morgan, what you think?
I think a lot of this has to do with, just to echo for a moment, the whole person, right? You have to treat the whole person. Hierarchy of needs comes into the discussion a lot in library services. So we know about this from education, right? If you are, if you're hungry, you can't learn as well as the kids sitting next to you. So what else in that hierarchy of needs isn't being met? And would I have a better chance with this group of people for more people to do the things if those needs were met? And I think there's a lot of stuff there, and it gets hard and it gets heavy, and you have to like pick it apart. But there again, we got to think about it. You got to ask these things. And then for the general community, what you can do is mainstream the idea of entrepreneurship. I did a chamber luncheon speaking engagement right before Thanksgiving. And at the end, I said, I have entertained you for 45 minutes because I'm really funny. But here's where you pay me. You pay me by talking to someone else about Kansas City business at Thanksgiving. We have to talk about it. We have to see it. We have to report on it. Somebody make me a reality TV show about entrepreneurship, because that's how we mainstream. That's how we make it normal. That's how we show each other what you should do when it's time to pivot.
I think we lost Morgan. Her microphone like blew up because she was spitting some heat right there. So we'll let Morgan come back on. This next question, and actually, so I had a conversation with Aaron Jenkins and with Kaufman, and we were. He said, and my computer died. So Morgan says she'll be back on here shortly. So I had a conversation with Aaron, and she it was a specific question for Dell, but it's also a question for the group. Aaron says she dropped the mic. So with many national, regional, and local focuses, how does local movement and change mesh, with regional and national initiatives? So like, there's so many different perspectives, right? You have the local perspective, then local narrative, you have the regional, and then you have the national. And so Dell, specifically for you, because we know that you've been doing a lot from the regional, national, and some local as well. So you have a great perspective when we talk about the three different pieces, three different levels. So we wanted to start with you. What's your thoughts on that? How does that mesh? How does that correlate?
Man, Black people are everywhere, man. And every Black community I go to, people think our community is different. Outside of some subtle idiosyncrasies, you are not. Like, even going to KCK, I was like, wow, this is just like Omaha. 68111, 66101 is the same as 68101. Go down to Wichita. I've been in LA, I've been in New York, whatever. The only difference is the scope and scale and some cultural things, but the common denominator is we don't have anything. So when you talk about local and national and regional, as a collective, we don't own the necessary things to kind of satisfy our own needs and to have the level of power that we want and need to achieve our goals, whichever they are. And so when we look at it in aggregate, yes, we do, but because of the way things are decentralized, the way we're uncoordinated, everybody is looking at it as if their city is unique and struggling with certain types of issues. But racism is impactful across the board. By definition, when we talk about systemic racism and structural racism, they are influencing things across the board in the United States. So what you do local can mesh with what you do national by doing what you do local really well and telling other people around the nation what it is. And I'm talking economics specifically. And so if you build a great ecosystem and you figure out how to solve the solution to creating better and stronger Black ecosystems, to recycle the dollar more, to build a capacity and ownership structure in your community, then you share that. And if you hear other people doing it well or have promising practices, then you look to see if you can adopt that. Like when we talked about, so let's go back to Black Wall Street. Everybody's like Black Wall Street, Black Wall Street. Well, we had something called the Harlem Renaissance. We had Rosewood. I got a whole book on Oklahoma Black towns. You can go to almost every major Black city at the time and see that they had a pretty much relatively decent business district. So when we look at the historical things, people were doing things locally, but it was locally that was consistent across other things that were happening in the nation. So now to more directly answer your question, one big ecosystem building is a movement. It is a thing. And the narrative in the ecosystem building world, as I see it and connect to it, is how do we create greater diversity and inclusion in that space? So if I was going to say plug into any national movement and adopt it locally, it would be entrepreneurship, ecosystem building in communities of color, which I just so happen to have a guide out on the Kansas City Federal Reserve Bank website. Shameless plug. So this is my last point on this, because I don't want to wax too philosophical. And I used to have a saying that until you control your space, you will never control your race. The concept of ownership is the most powerful thing that we can pursue, greater than any social justice pursuit that you may have, because the precursor to social justice is economic power. If you don't have economic power, social justice is always given to you, which means it can always be taken away. That's my philosophy for the moment.
I love
that. What's Kira? What's that old cartoon? Takes one. That's one to grow on. Remember that from the Saturday morning cartoon?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I can't speak to it on Dell's level, but I will say that what I do know, what I do know is that it's important for us to really talk about some of the language. I see that as a gap for us, right? We talk real high, and we have jargon that's given to us on very high levels. But when you talk about, like Morgan said, and kind of normalizing what is entrepreneurship and getting that in the mindset of the students and the kids that we're serving, some of the things we have to do and we've learned to do is code switch. And I hear you say this, oh, but it really means that. And I think that we have an obligation, right? People who are resource providers to minority entrepreneurs to not only educate them about what those terms mean, but really talk about how do we use these terms? What is an ecosystem? And we know that you wrote the guide, and we know that you've given us that information, but what is it that we are actually doing? We may already be an ecosystem now, and we don't even know it because we're not operating from that mindset of that's what an ecosystem is. And I want to say this, I know we're you know, on a time frame, but one thing that I don't want to get lost with this opportunity when we start talking about what does our communities need and what is it that we need as support providers for our communities to sustain, our businesses to sustain. I think it's very important for us to understand that the conversations of diversity inclusion and having a minority on the board or having a person of color in the room does nothing for us if we have to always continue to ask to be invited, if we have to always continue to make sure some point in history, and I'm saying today, we need to stop being in these rooms and looking for the tallest person, Troy Nash. The people who are in the room, they need to be held accountable to say, how come everybody in here look like me? And then what about the points of including us? How can you give me an arm of your organization that says it's just focused on minority entrepreneurship? That's like me going and saying, I want to start, you know, inclusion for the Asian community. I have no freaking clue what the Asian community needs. So we can't allow that to continue to be the narrative and then say that we have an ecosystem. We don't have an ecosystem. We have a system.
Right.
It's working for some of us. It's not working for all of us. And so that I feel like, you know, terms, we say things, but we don't know what they mean. And not only do we not know what they mean, even after we educate ourselves, we have to educate the people inside the system. If I need something, I need to go to the library to get it from Morgan, or I need to go see Dr. Nash. That's the part of it that I feel like we get lost in. You know, we can have 1 billion conferences, we can have 100 Zooms, but if the people that live in the system don't know the system, it's not gonna matter. It's not going to matter. So I don't know what part of the questions that was, but I wanted to say that. I think it's important for what we're talking about.
Right. Right.
I agree. I appreciate you sharing that for sure. So a couple of comments that came through. Hurston said, more of us must learn the code. The narrative is being shaped right now regarding the value of our existence. Right now, our level of importance as humans is subjective, and very soon it will be viewed through a binary objective via machine learning and algorithms. So that's my tech guy, and that's his perspective for sure, which is a great perspective. Daniel Edwards chimed in and says you can't rent change, and so that was, I think, in response to what Dell was saying earlier. Basically, you know, you can't rent it, which is true. Tarsha said, "Hey Morgan." So Morgan's computer blew up, and now she got back on. So I'm glad she was able to make it back on. Eric said, in other words, there's no leverage if you don't have any weight, and I think that was in Dell's comments as well. And then Tarsha said it's hard to be everywhere at once. The top, bottom, and middle. I can understand we need a little business plus community. So that was hers. Doctor, what you think about that? What you think about the national versus local focuses? Dale was saying about communities, the Black communities that were like the Black Wall Street that were created in the past, and which were some of the most successful or wealthiest Black communities in the country. But what does that look like? I mean, now, how does that look now?
Well, I think, though, the question really tends toward geography. In other words, when you talk about national, regional, or local, listen, Karen is everywhere. I can't go bird watching. I can't barbecue. I can't stand in my own driveway. So that's everywhere. So I think it's a distinction without a difference. In other words, it's just geography. You got some folks who, for whatever reason, and there are any number of reasons why they feel the way they feel, who brought us here. And then when all that happens, there are still some people who are upset about it. Right? I mean, that's just really a watered down version of 400 years of history. But in all seriousness, the reality is we have to get in our own minds. That no one's come. Oprah said about there's no one coming to rescue us, guys. I'm telling you, it's not going to. Listen, I serve on national boards, served on regional boards, state boards, and a local board. I get it. We live in a capitalist, democratic society. There are rules and regulations governing how we behave, what we do. I mean, I get all of that. And it goes back to what Dell and Cheree said earlier. In other words, this stuff is systemic. It's built into the system by definition, and a lot of it is through tradition, right? It was etched in the law, right? But a lot of those habits and practices still there. I'm almost always the tallest one in the room. And I'm almost always the one starting trouble and starting fights. But I do it in such a palatable, socially acceptable way. You don't even realize what's being done to you. You understand what I'm saying? Now that is the war that I've had to wage since I was 4.5, right? Because once you make the decision to do something with your life, all hell will break loose. See, it's not just the other folks. I mean, if we want to use the pejorative term other, guys, sometimes we got to look at us. Sometimes we got to look at us, and that's an uncomfortable conversation, because if somebody says that, well, they say, well, now Troy likes Morgan Borden, he likes Kara, right? Because she's in her kitchen and Kara is in some look that looks like a suite or something, right? They'll make all these invidious, nonsensical distinctions, which clouds the debate. Control your thoughts, grow in consciousness, understand that you don't know what it is you don't know, and try to be the best version of yourself. Yes, you're going to deal with mean, nasty, racist people, but you're also going to deal with jealousy, envy, hate, and all these other emotions that are common in all of us, regardless of race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or whatever the case may be. Now, my worldview, in closing here, is shaped by having traveled to 70 plus countries around the world. I don't know how to give all this hate stuff out. I just don't know. I tried it. I tried to sit there and just hate somebody, and I don't even know what it feels like. I mean, I tried to do it. And when you travel the world, what you'll find out, guys, is that it has less to do with race than more so to do with humanity. People treating people bad. I've seen people that look just alike, and it's not race. It's class, right? Always trying to put the proverbial other down. I don't like it. I speak out against it. And I don't like people who practice those kinds of life habits. And so I think it's a much larger issue. It's a human debate in America and our short history. Our history is what it is, and we're having to deal with it. I think we make ourselves better people and work with what we have to make life better. for ourselves and others. I mean, I think that's the deal.
Awesome, awesome. Any thoughts? Any thoughts, Morgan?
I think there has to be multiple on-ramps to success. So when I am outside of Kansas City and I am talking to other libraries about how they can get into the community and do this work and how to focus on low to moderate income businesses, that's who really needs your help. We always talk about the ecosystem in Kansas City. And we have to start positioning ourselves around this knowledge that that ecosystem doesn't work for everyone, and that it's okay to not want help from where the help is being offered from. And then we have to look at ourselves as support organizations and leave room for that. That you might want to get help from somewhere else, or that you want your help to come to you in a different format, and then have a discussion about where are the holes in our ecosystem and how do we get those holes filled. But that really starts from a place of, can I hear you without being so defensive? Because how dare you suggest that my middle class white ladiness couldn't help everyone? That we have to be able to address that. And I am just another middle class white lady in a nonprofit wanting to help all the people, and there's 4 million of me. So how can we start to think about it from both sides of this issue in it's okay to not want help from the person who's offering you help, but then what do you do next? And if you're the person out in the community and you're offering the help and somebody doesn't want your help, can you be okay with that? And I think the answer right now that we are struggling with is that, no, Karen and Melissa, I like to use Melissa. Melissa can't be okay with that right now. So how do we become inclusive as a support community and know that there are support organizations that don't come to the meeting? And then we need to look at why they don't come to the meeting and start to ask those questions.
Right.
Dan Sharon, may I make one comment there? Because Morgan said something that triggered a thought. It'll be very brief. It's not necessarily some people don't want the help. I've seen it in my own life. Sometimes the socially conscious white liberal, and I've seen it with my own eyes, and I've experienced the chill going down my back here. Can be the worst enemy, because the help comes with the hint of sort of condescending kind of like behavior. Let me give you a real example. I got Black friends, but don't marry my son or daughter. Am I talking to anybody here today? You see what I'm saying? I've witnessed it. I've seen it, right? I've seen young people, my daughter's age, go off on their parents and say, wait a minute, I'm getting a mixed message here. So I just wanted to put that out in the universe, because I've experienced that in a sense where be good but not that good kind of a thing. So long as the other person was sort of top dog, I've experienced it educationally, and it's all very subtle. In polite society, we don't talk about it, or we all got to be so nice, right? We get that game too, but it's always a hint of sort of condescending behavior. It's kind of like a little cut. You don't really feel it's real subtle. So I just wanted to put that in the universe. I think I owe it.
Yeah, that's the whole premise of the movie Get Out. Is that same? That was the whole. He just said the whole movie Get Out. I think Cheree has a point that made a point that I want to recognize and don't want to gloss over about the importance of understanding and knowing terminology. And so we've been saying ecosystem a lot. And just for point of clarification, every city with one entrepreneur has an ecosystem. It could just be a terrible ecosystem. So for the listeners who are more familiar with the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child, replace village with entrepreneur, and now you understand ecosystem building. So it's the context, the environment, the support systems, the mechanisms, the education, the discipline, the culture, all of those things in which an entrepreneur exists that supports them or detracts from them starting and growing a firm. That's an ecosystem. So when we say an ecosystem, you could just simply replace the term with with community, and what we would want is a strong community of support for local entrepreneurs through all the mechanisms, resources, infrastructure, financing, education, just the informal connections and communication of support, care, and concern. That's an ecosystem. So don't let that word scare you off from what it really is. So when we say Black Wall Street, what we were really talking about is an ecosystem of mutual business support that allowed businesses to start and grow in a protected environment that supported each other and helped them grow and scale along with the community that purchased products from them. So that's what we mean when we say ecosystem.
I love that. I love that.
And so, that's what Jim Crow, Dell, that's what Jim Crow destroyed right after Reconstruction. That's what it obliterated.
Right. Ron, you were about to say something?
I was going to ask a question, but go ahead. What was you about to say? You was about to say something?
No, I was just going to say, because we're past 7 o'clock. We're at the 7:16 mark. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to ask one more question, and then within that question, if you had any like closing remarks or anything like that, I definitely want you to share. Sharon, were you going to say something else before we jump into this last one?
Nope, you just said it. But
okay,
yeah, I was really excited about having these guests tonight. So I just wanted to say that before anybody said anything. I was like, I need to get these key speakers. I need to get Dr. Troy Nash, Dell Guines, Cheree together. So yeah, but I wanted to start with Cheree. Sorry, Dan. I wanted to start with Cheree to give her closing remarks out.
Was there another question? I just want to be mindful.
So this is the So what are some action items for local leaders, business owners, and community members? What can they do to start to implement and sustain economic change in their own community? And I know we've kind of touched on this a little bit throughout the conversation, but what are some, like, when I put a pin in it, I could do this, this, and this. And it doesn't have to be all like local leader businesses and community members, but from one of those perspectives, what's something that they could do to sustain economic change in their communities or start economic change in their communities? And what's your closing thoughts of that?
So I would say the answer that I'll do the local leaders. I would say support organizations that support Black communities. And Dell started us off with that tonight. And I think that that's important. We need the support just like all of the other support organizations need the support. So if you really want to help us to help Black businesses, help the support communities that are doing that. I'm already culturally competent. You don't have to train me. You don't have to send me anywhere. I know what that means. So support us so we can support us. That's what I would say. And my closing remarks are this. I want to thank everybody on the panel, but I want to give a shout out to the Black men on this panel because I know that I have no clue what it means to be a Black man, but I know that when you leave your door, you face something that I will never face. And so my hat is off to you guys. You guys are doing phenomenal things. You're leaders with integrity. You make us proud as Black women in our community. And so please continue. Don't stop. Don't give up. Don't be quiet. Don't sit in the back. Don't shy away from any platform that God has given you because we need you. And so I'm lifting up you guys tonight. I'm very, very proud of you. So thank you. And Morgan, I need to get over and spend some time with you at the library. I have some students that need to come see you. So thank you. I'm honored to be a part of this.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Dr. Nash, what are some action items that we could take away?
Again, I go back to the individual because if you ain't right, the stuff that comes out of you is not going to be right. Get your mind right. Understand that we live in a world where people are different. Learn to respect those differences and work the system because there are systems in place. I can give you 10,000 reasons why I cannot do something. I don't believe in any of them because I've been sit around and brainwash myself so much so and bought into this positive stuff so much so that it helps me make that mental leap from where I am to where I'd like to be, in spite of all the things that we've talked about. Notice, I acknowledge every single thing that has been said here, because it's true at various levels. So what? So what? You get one life to live. And I'll be damned if I'm going to waste my time worrying about somebody not liking me because of the color of my skin. That's your problem, right? And I'm going to work my damnedest to do what it is I came here to do, and to make the impact and the change that I feel that I need to make, regardless of it. And so I just think that kind of mindset, notwithstanding what maybe, that presence of mind is something that we really ought to learn to deal with, because I don't care where you go in the world, you're going to have conflict. I don't care where you go in the world, you're going to always have a group of people thinking that they're better than you for whatever reason. Deal with it. That's the
I love it.
Yeah, period. Doesn't know.
Right on.
That's all I got.
I appreciate it. So Tarsha has been trying to get us to acknowledge the international piece, because we talked about national, we talked about regional, we talked about local, but we know that there is also the international connection as well, that is alive and well. So Tarsha, that's for a different conversation, but I appreciate you definitely rocking home that international point. We appreciate that.
Yeah, that's
Dell,
kind of part two, because we had actually a lot of questions to ask tonight, but questions went over. But go ahead, Dell.
There's a lot that you can go through in regard to recommendations around economics, small business development, all that. I'm gonna leave you with two simple ones. First of all, get your children into entrepreneurship education right away. Right away. Like, if you can find something online tomorrow to begin to educate and teach them, you have to normalize it. I think it was Kira who was talking about that, normalizing entrepreneurship. And it's easier to normalize it with a child than it is for an adult, because we have to spend a lot of time unwinding your mind from the labor market to get you to think like an entrepreneur. Kids just absorb that, and they're naturally innovative. So get your kids. I don't even care if you just had the baby. Get them into entrepreneurship right away, right? That's point one. Point two, I believe every Black household in America should have some kind of business, even if it's just selling something on eBay or doing a garage sale. Again, normalizing it, learning how to actually create and sell a product, or to buy a product and sell a product or a service. That should be a normal process in every Black household in the community. So that's point two. Point three, for existing entrepreneurs, and this was a challenge I gave to the people in all the Black women outreach events that I did, is I just told them to raise their hand if they were an entrepreneur. And I said, look around, invite 4 of those people to have coffee, and do it on a routine period. Because one of the things that came out of Black women was they wanted more peer-to-peer learning and association. And I'm like, that's the easiest thing to do. Coffee costs not, shoot, $5, I could buy you, let's see, I don't know. Y'all like that fancy coffee here. I can see we got some bougie people on here. So you want those $7, $8 coffees, man. I drink that 50-cent darkness, but okay, fine. Absolutely. So your coffee costs $5 and you have 5 people. Rotate it. Have 25 people, $25 for 5 people. Rotate it once a week. You can do that. Sit down and talk about business. Entrepreneurs feel lonely. It's an easy thing to do. During COVID, we can't get together like that. So do it through Zoom. Just say, hey, holler at your Facebook timeline and say, how many of you are entrepreneurs, man? Let's 5 of you. Let's just get together at 7 a.m. on every Monday and just talk about what we're experiencing and how we can support each other. So those are the practical things. Now I'm going to go philosophical. And this is an encouragement to the entire Black race. So Marcus Garvey said, stand up, you mighty race. And I think this is important for you to understand what he was saying and the power of that statement. It wasn't become a mighty race. It wasn't like get things out of your way so that you can someday maybe be a mighty race. It was stand up, you mighty race. The implications of that statement from Marcus was that you are already mighty. The question is not whether you are mighty. The question is whether you will stand. And that's the question that we have to continually ask ourselves. Our greatness is without question. By definition, we should be dead and not be here. but we are here. We survived slavery. We survived Jim Crow. We survived the loss of our culture. We survived urban renewal. We survived mass incarceration, and we are still here, and we are still killing it to the degree in which we never should have by the right. So God has blessed us. So the question is not whether you are mighty or not. The question is whether you will stand. So that's my challenge to the Black community today.
Cool. First of all, I'm surprised Dell's video didn't crash like just like Morgan's did earlier, like right before that last statement hit in. I'm surprised it did. That was dope, man. I love that. I'm glad this is recorded so we can go back, and everybody that's watching can go back and pull all these gems that have been provided in this conversation. I love it, man. First of all, I want to give shout outs to the folks that are watching. Jeff Davis, Morgan's right here. Kiana, Tarsha, Eric, LaMonica, my wife Aisha, she's tuned in. Sharon's wife Lauren is tuned in. Hurston. We appreciate all of you guys for tuning in, and Sarah and watching. We appreciate all the viewers. We appreciate our guests. I can't express how excited we were when we found out that we could get all three of you on at the same time, because we knew that this is a necessary conversation with necessary people, and you guys are phenomenal in everything that you guys do. So we appreciate you guys for taking the time and sharing some of that wisdom that you guys have with us and our viewers. Anything else? Any last words, Sharon or Morgan?
I would just like go ahead, Morgan. I know. No. Oh, okay. I just want everybody on the panel or guests to put their links to their books on the chat if you possibly can. How we can get in contact with you if anybody wanted to talk to you or ask you any questions. Also, don't be afraid to share the Porterhouse KC. You can add your books onto the group page. That's free promo right there. And also, I know Dell have a podcast. I see every now and then. Kira have a podcast. I didn't know if Dr. Nash, did you have a podcast?
No, listen, my daughter and I started one. She's doing Mindful Millennials, and you're going to see her Instagram account, her Facebook account, and all that. I'm following her lead. It's at Mindful Millennials KC, at Mindful Millennials KC. This kid is an avid reader. She's been all over the world. And although I'm her father, she thinks most of the time she's my leader. So you're going to see a lot of good stuff come out of that, really, for millennials and entrepreneurs. So at Mindful Millennials with an S, KC, is where you could begin to follow her work.
Right on.
Yes.
And Dale, how can we get into your podcast?
I don't really have a podcast. I just do a random fake Facebook show every now and then. So just when the mood strikes me. But so you can always follow me on Facebook. But if you want to check out the work that we do at the KC Fed, which I encourage you to do, because we're doing a lot of cool stuff, digital inclusion work, different programs. Of course, you know what stuff I'm working on. You can go to kansascityfed.org and check that out. And then if you want to get directly to our page, you go to the tab on community development. You can get to all of our stuff. So that's kansascityfed.org. And then, you know, for my random stuff, you know, I did find out today, Kira, that somebody catfished me on LinkedIn. So yeah, so you go to Dell Gines, and there's this guy who is saying that he's an engineer at some oil company. He has my picture right up there. And I'm like, man, he's got better job than me. What? We need to change positions.
Oh man.
You famous,
but yeah,
famous.
You can follow me on Twitter. I am Dell Gines, LinkedIn, Dell Gines, or whatever. Communicate to me through any channel that you want to chat with. I'll be there.
Right on. And Kira, how can we reach you?
They can reach me at KiraCheree.com. Kira means shining light, and Cheree means beloved.
All right, and your podcast?
I have a live that I do. I do it on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Okay, right on, right on. And my last words is always be positive. And for the business owners, network. I always speak of networking, so that's my last words. Go ahead, Morgan.
Morgan?
I think for the last question, when I really think about all of those things put together, be intentional where you spend your dollars, because your dollars are not just a dollar. It's also a vote. It's also a motion to tell someone that you hope they survive. So watch your money and watch what they do with your money. When we talk about building our economy, not just on a national level, but in a local way, your vote, your dollar, it matters where you put that. So I was raised in a home where you buy according to value, and that is not how I spend my money right now. I am voting for that restaurant's survival. Mm-hmm. And I am voting for what kind of employee interaction happens, right? Who's keeping staff, who's not keeping staff. So really be intentional with your dollars and think about yourself as part of an economy. You are part of that. You have power in that way to make these decisions and be a part of this thing that is going on. So I think that's my closing thought for today. You guys, when Dan said like 4 times how excited we were, I'm going to echo that because we were so flippin' excited. Like I've been on text with my boss this entire conversation, like, oh my God, you won't believe what Dell Guides just said, and Dr. Troy Nash, and what Karen just said, and these people are brilliant. So I know it sometimes it feels like it's a little show we just do, but I really appreciate you donating your time to engage with us like this. And in such a shareable way because we all go to like fancy meetings. This is the anti-fancy meeting.
Yeah.
So thank you for spending the time with the regular folks too. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And so to close it out, next week we're going to be talking some opportunity zones. We got some great guests for next week. And it's going to be another great conversation. Again, we're just talking about community development, economic development, sustainability, and all those great things. So again, everybody that's watching, if you can, share this video, share this live that we just did. A lot of insight, a lot of good information in there. So please share it and come back next Wednesday at 6 o'clock. We'd love to see you. And so I guess that is there's nothing else to be said.
Nope. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I just want to have fun tonight. Yeah. I just want to have fun tonight. Yeah. We just want to have fun tonight. Yeah. I just want to have. We just want to have. I just want to have fun tonight. Pull up, parking lot, pimpin', making our favors, man. Deep in the beat out here all night, but to get some tags. Police sticking on bread that barricade with the sandbags. We don't even pay the door to get in, but the bounce is saying that we can't sag. I know, we about to be the people. Some of us the base and mistakes. Believe that shit and pick up. Ain't no come out here trying to roll them in. Hey, don't be a tough boy with the full clear. Let them boys live. I just want to have fun tonight. Yeah. I just want to have fun tonight. Yeah. We just want to have fun tonight. Yeah. Just want to have. We just want to have. I just want to have fun tonight. Yeah. I just want to have fun tonight. Yeah. We just want to have fun tonight. Yeah. I just want to have. We just want to have. I just want to have a house party with the car colors. Look looking like it's finna be my summer. Out of town.